So you can turn this around.
Okay. So at County Council budget hearings, which was also a public meeting, it was discussed that the county commissioners, whom are the contracting entity, have been engaged to now subsidize EMS in Knox County. And let me repeat to everyone, if you don't know, we have not paid for EMS in Knox County as long as I have memories. I'm sure a few of you that have been around longer could correct me if I'm wrong, but every county around us in some form or fashion pays for that service, either through a hospital, through owning it themselves, through a private company. It's a mishmash all over the state, as well as costs. So the commissioners then went in discussions with some of the city leadership. We had meetings some months ago about here's kind of what's coming down the schedule here. We're looking at being faced with having to pay for a public safety service, and we're going to figure out how we're going to do it. So some months passed. We went to county council and said, we have two proposals on the table of what EMS could look like locally, and we feel that with the city being a partner in the use of this service, we need to come together and figure out how we can pay for those proposals. And we still have those decisions to make on what that will look like. Either way, we have to fund it. The county council gave the commissioners a nod to proceed with looking into what a public safety lit would generate. No decisions made that that's going to be what happens, but we cumulatively at the county level decided that that would be our first option of entertainment, of looking at what it would generate to pay for the service. So hence we are here today. I asked us as a city jointly to look at this. Again, I want to dispel any rumors that we're here to just reactively pass some tax to pay for a service that we haven't even decided 100% yet. And let me remind everyone that once we make any decisions in EMS, that is a decision that takes time. We just can't flip a switch and, ambulances show up. We want to do what's best for the county. We want to do what's best for the city. We want to do it jointly, and we want to do it as fiscally, as responsibly as possible. And I want to make sure all the people are at the table, including our fire chiefs, including our hospital, including our 911 center, including our police and, our other fire departments. So that's all of it in a nutshell. I hope everyone understands what that means. And we are all in this, as cliche as can possibly say, together. Reedy is here, and they have put together some numbers for us as to what that would look like, and I'm hoping that any questions we have, the subject matter experts are here to answer that for us. Do you have any questions for me? Trent, you got anything to follow up? All right.
Hey everybody, my name is Brandon Robbins, for those that don't know, at Reedy Financial Group. For this session, we've put together pretty well as good of information as we could get together on the income tax laws that we're seeing right now, the current, status of what we would expect or project each unit to receive in this public safety lit environment. Again, it is not something that you'll know definitively or get your certification on until you actually implement it. The process is kind of long, and it does take the cooperation of each of the communities involved here. So I'm going to kind of walk you through. For the elected official folks here, I've got some books, and I've got it up here as well. And if we don't have enough, I'm happy to get a copy out to the group. So I've got in this book kind of the overall process, how it would work, what the estimates are on the actual receipt of funds, and then also we've got some impacts to taxpayers, things like that projected. So I'll run through that, and then we have a timeline that we can look at. I did talk to our friends at the DLGF. Fred Van Dorp's a friend of ours, and we had a good conversation with him about how the laws read getting this through in Old Coet County. So he's pretty interested to see how that would work as well, because normally the Income Tax Council would be the county council, but in this case, it is a joint effort between populations. So very interesting how it's going to work, but for you guys to be educated on it is why we're here, and I want everybody to kind of walk out of here having a better understanding of the process. So if you jump into that first page, I kind of mentioned it as we look at that historical information section. County option income tax and county adjusted gross income tax were how we used to do local income tax before 2017. One was controlled. The county council would have been the controlling entity through a Cadgett County. They would have made the decision on the rate. In a Coet County, it was more of a population base. And then it kind of started breaking down into different allocation categories. So for instance, if a unit of government, let's say the county had more than 50% of the population, they could then make that vote. In this case, we don't have, and I have an allocation sheet right here, we don't have any units that are considered in this public safety lit above 50%. You can see that the county makes up 36.48 as of most recent information. Obviously, a census could change some of this, but 36.48% of the total population, and then the city of Vincennes makes up 47.93. So you need to have over 50% to make that decision. Now, when you get to looking at some of the language we have in here and how this works, a majority has to be made by each body. So in this case, the county council, if they get a majority vote yes, that counts as 100% of that vote. Okay, so there's basically 100 votes. You make up 36.48 of those votes. And then the city would make up 47.93 of those votes. So if the city gets a majority voting yes from the council side, then it would pass at that point. It's considered as 100% of that voting body's vote. So you would essentially need 4 from each body. You have 7 in each council, correct? I know we do in Vincennes, so 7 in yours. So you need 4 from each body to pass it through.
I want to point out we have the mayor of Bicknell here as well.
Sure.
That city.
And their votes would be, let's see, the 7.58%. So 7.58 votes out of the 100. That's how that would work. So the reason why I'm showing you this part first is because we first need to understand how we actually get it done, how the allocation would work. And then later on, we go through the process to understand the timeline of how do you get all these bodies to work together to make that happen before the deadlines or with whatever the projected goal is. So, and then below that, if nobody has any questions on the vote allocation, comparable lit data. What I like to do in any circumstance, and I've done this with the city too, and we like to put in the financial planning side as much comparable data so you can kind of see where we stack up. But this shows Knox County's lit environment in comparison to surrounding counties. If Matt, if you'll scroll down just a little bit for me, bud. Oh, you're good. Yeah.
Our jail lit rate is 0.2.
Yeah. That's the max you can have for that rate, and it goes 100% to the county.
Okay, because again, we've slept some since then. I think we thought it was 0.25. But you're saying
It can't go over 0.2. No. So the jail correctional facility rate that was implemented, this is a new law that happened maybe 2 years ago, and it basically was enacted to use for correctional facilities, right? I mean, that's kind of the restriction or the earmark for it. It is 0.2% is the max rate you can do on that, but 100% of what is collected goes to the county for that jail correctional facility. That's how that works. The idea is the less units that are involved, the more money you can generate with lesser rate. So when you use a certified share, which goes to just about everybody but the school, you have a 0.1% or 0.2% like you do on that jail tax, you receive a whole lot less because many other units are involved. In public safety and economic development, it's the county and the municipalities, as we're about to look at. But it is 0.2%, and the only way that could be higher is if there's legislation specific to Knox County. But as of what we looked at, I think yesterday, those are the rates that are on the state budget agency. So your total rate is 1.2% right now for your income tax. And if you look at Pike and Gibson counties, they're at 0.75 and 0.9%. Theirs are much lower, and it's kind of confusing how that next sentence reads, but Theirs are much lower from the perspective that, hey Matt, that's the old one letter. The one we have right here has the updated data. I don't know if you got it saved on yours or not, but it's got the old information on it. But we can leave it up and run through it. It's fine. So they have a much lower percent on theirs because they are using the type of income tax that stays primarily with the county or the municipalities. They don't have a big certified shares rate that's shared with everybody. So basically, they have a lower rate to generate more revenue that stays in their community. That's the idea if you look at them from a dollars perspective. So I'm trying to give you guys a little background on that. The other piece of it is, in our books here, you guys out of 92 counties rank 77th. You're very low on the income tax rates. There are some that are way up. I think 2.9 might be the highest. There's some special legislation and such. But in 2017, the state basically made it simpler for communities to use income tax because we all know about tax caps, right? I mean, especially in this community. The tax caps really restrict us from generating new levies, new revenues from property taxes. Every time we meet with the city side, we do our financial planning. We're always planning for the circuit breaker because the circuit breaker is 30+% here, which means we collect 70% of our taxes when we issue levies for property tax. So income tax is a great subsidy for this. So the state made it simpler because a lot of communities were being impacted by this. But in our case here, we didn't have a public safety, and that's obviously what we're talking about today. And we also have the voting allocation that you saw on the top there. So let me jump into kind of the tax rate allocation piece here. A little bit more education on the actual income tax. So your expenditure rate is what you collect in dollars, okay? You get certified shares, and it says it right there. You get public safety, you get economic development, you get lit correctional facility. Currently, you have 0.6 that is certified shares, 0.4% that is economic development, and you have 0.2%, which makes that 1.2, which is made up of the lit correctional facilities. The certified shares goes to every unit except for the schools. The correctional goes just to the county, and the economic development goes to the county, the city, and the towns. Okay, so in the cities and the towns. Right now, the public safety is the only piece that you don't have from that, and you also don't have the property tax relief component. So there's some other functions you can use there that are outside of that 2.5%, but your max cap is 2.5% for these types of income tax. So the 1.2 can go up to that. Does that make sense how we're looking at that? There are other income taxes you can issue that are in the form of more of a property tax relief or a credit to your taxpayers. Those are actually outside of that expenditure rate, and I think they're capped at 1.25%. And again, you don't have those in a really high circuit breaker environment. You generally don't see the tax relief on your taxpayer side. It just kind of relieves the circuit breaker a little bit. Not necessarily something we're pushing for here, but the 4 categories you see up there are the dollars that go towards your budgets. Those are the ones that you really want to look at when you're issuing in a high circuit breaker community. So, impact to taxpayers. What we try to base everything on is your median household income is generally right around that $47,380 based on Data USA. We try to kind of use comparable data. I know in the past I've looked at the income tax impacts during COVID. We did some presentations down here for that and discussions, and we considered that information as well, which ended up really turning out in our favor with the income tax side of things because people were collecting the enhanced unemployment and such. So we'll talk about that in the next meeting though. So what we're doing is just a very basic calculation. So we assume you got a $50,000 wage earner. We're showing you what 0.1%, 0.25%, and 0.4% would look like on that $50,000 wage earner. In its most basic calculation, what you're looking at is that 0.1% is basically 10 cents per $100, okay, of income. So it ends up being $50 a year, $4.17 a month. Okay, and then you work your way down $10.42 a month, $16.67 a month is what that would equate to this taxpayer making $50,000 a year in income. Okay. Any questions on how that works? I mean, it's pretty much the most basic way to look at it. Yes.
And that's only for residents that live in the county? Or is
Yeah,
it
your income tax stays here.
So workers who live in another county, but they don't?
They pay those other counties' income taxes.
Does this affect those who are on Social Security?
As far as the deductions
Right.
on that goes,
Is that considered a wage or income where they pay into it?
if they pay income tax on their wages, then they pay this tax. But I'm not sure on the Social Security side of it. I don't honestly know off the top of my head on how that would pass through. So I'm sure there's some protections, sort of like the 65 and over with circuit breaker, but
There's a formula that you have to
right.
go through that, depending on your income, part of that is,
Under a certain amount is restricted to be taxed at, yeah,
part of that is exempt and part of it.
right.
So if you're strictly on Social Security, you're not going to pay anything?
I wouldn't think you at a certain level, yeah, on the threshold side of that. I don't know. So, for instance, like the enhanced unemployment right now isn't taxed until after the first $10,800 of collections. I think it's something similar to that, but the fact that I don't know it off the top of my head, I really don't want to say yes or no for sure. But it wouldn't be hard to find. So, but yes, I think that when you get into those types of criteria, there's always those deductions or caps or credits that people apply for. And when you look at income tax in general, there's obviously ways that, folks can bring down that taxable value. But this is based on your paycheck. So this comes out on your paycheck for your local income tax share of that. So when it comes to that side of it, I could research it and find it out today for you, but I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Because I don't want people to say, well, I want a fixed income.
Right.
Well, if the fact is you're not going to pay it, then I won't be able to say that.
Right.
You know?
Right. Can you write that down, and then we'll have text Mickey and see if he can get it before we're done here. I'll try to get it before we're out of this. So yeah, no problem. So standard wage earner, that's how that would look for the standard $50,000 income. From there, you can kind of do the math. If you make 75, 100, if you make 40, whatever, we use the same math or equation there to come up with what that dollar value is. But I wanted to show everybody, we don't like to show the benefit without showing the impact. I wanted to make sure everybody's on the same page with that. But when you compare it to property taxes, property taxes are assessed on every single parcel of ground. So it's a little different. So one individual might own multiple parcels. They're not getting taxed the same way. It's tending to be a bit more equitable from that perspective because they get taxed one time. So, and it's pretty marginal overall. And as you see later on, the dollar values that are associated with each of those numbers, you can kind of make your decisions from there on what that number would be that you would need. So we're going to jump right into that. Projected lit revenues. I have a note on kind of how the formula is considered. There's variables that go into this that look all the way back to 2005 debts that a community might have. Laws have changed many times since then, but we have used the most current information. And we've got certified totals for income tax from the state budget agency through August 2nd of 2021. So we're going to be as accurate as we can possibly be at this point, but until you really start collecting income tax and distributing it, you don't ever really know exactly what it's going to be. I've talked to a few people in the city on income tax. I've presented an AIM on income tax and AIC now. Is everybody familiar with how that collection period works versus distribution period? Because I know we're right in the middle of budgets. You collect your income taxes almost 18 months prior to when you actually start to receive them on your budget piece. All right, so you start, I use the COVID example with what the governor's order did, or the thing he sent out, I think it was an order, during COVID. But normally it would be that June 30th window to July 31st, July 1st. It's a 12-month period of collection. It's a fiscal year. And then you would start your next year, August, back on the June 30th window. I have a great graph that would show me this, and I'm not picturing it right. But ultimately what happens is you collect it from June 30th for 12 months, And then you have a 6-month period that starts the next collection period for the next year's budget. So for instance, that June 30th, 19 for the next 12 months, that is the collection period that would have been for the 2021 budget. Okay? So there's a delay. There's a big delay. So what happens here is if we were to implement by October 31st of this year, our trust account and the state will front that distribution period, the collection period delay. And then we'll build our trust account back up. And that's something that a lot of folks, I realized last week in our conference when we were presenting, folks don't fully understand that our collections are only certified for income tax because we actually collect them before they're distributed. So our distributions come in that January 1 to December 31st period, that collection period for our specific budget. And then you're already collecting in that next period while you're working off of 18 months ago's collections. It's kind of a weird process, but that money goes into the trust account at the state, and that trust account is monitored by the state and distributed back to your counties to be distributed to your units. So just so we're all aware of how that works, I think it's super important to kind of understand that period, because we'd be jumping right in the middle of this period, and we would be using our trust account funds as well as fronting it from the state until we rebuild it on the income tax side. Does that make sense? I know I need pictures and graphs right now, or a whiteboard. So as far as the calculation goes, it's broken down in there, but many different variables, and ultimately what it boils down to is this table on the next page. So based on that data, what you can see is, and really what matters is that additional 0.1%, additional 0.25%, additional 0.4%. Each unit would be receiving that amount of dollars in that specific public safety fund to budget for, if you did that based on right now's environment. Okay? So, and this, honestly, it's fairly similar to how your economic development works right now. If you were to look at that additional 0.4, that additional 0.4 is the same number, really, that your economic development distribution is for 2021's right now, or 2022's estimated. So we're kind of using that same pool of information. But that would be the dollar amount. Now from here, I guess you guys, it's kind of, what amount would you need? What do we need to fix the EMS issues? I'm not exactly sure on that. The city, we've got circuit breaker issues every single year. We're battling that. I know you guys are too. What is that amount? What puts you in a position to where your cash reserves can be safe, where you can actually fund your operations and your capital the way you need to? And then ultimately, if we look back a few pages, what was the impact? And that's kind of the way that this whole process goes, from the voting perspective, and I know I bounced around a little bit, to understanding the collection period, the distribution period, where we are with our actual collection of this in our public safety fund, how we would budget for it. We start thinking about these things. And then the process. The timeline is on that next tab, and I think we have it on a different Word doc for you guys to look at. The process is fairly immediate. That's not it. That's an old one. Oh, well, let's pull that one off. That's from an old look at it. We'll just leave that one up. So for those of you that do have the book, Wednesday, September 29th, just so happens to be today. That would be the date that we would send on the Knox County side. We would need to send the published notice for the taxpayers' hearing on proposal local income tax resolution. All right. If you look at that next tab, I have the DLGF documents in this book for all that. We can send it to the group, whoever would want to move forward with it, or we can help with it. But it's really up to the two entities right now, I think, to kind of look at this timeline. This is the way we have it posted to get it done by the end of October, which is your deadline to collect for January, for distribution in January. If you wait past October 31st, you're looking at next October's your first distribution. So you wouldn't be seeing any of that revenue until late next year, or a year away. And that's just the time windows from the state. So, and I think if we would have done it in July or something like that, it would have been early, I think October this year, you would have started seeing it. So, but again, this is where that lands, to get us done by October 31st. I know nobody's made their mind up. Nobody's really had the big discussions on this, and I know it's a big group effort. I wanted you guys to be aware of what that process would look like. So, but it does, in this case, take both the city council and it takes the county council. And ultimately, we've tried to match it up to your normal meeting dates. For the city, we've tried to get them through the budget process, which ends on the 12th for them. And then from there, Knox County would be done with theirs in their first and only meeting in the month of October. You have your advertisements that are laid out in here. You'd have your ordinances and resolutions, which are actually attached again in this book. And then from there, the city would do their part later on in the month. And then it would be filed with the auditor, and then the auditor would file it with the state. And that's really the process. You are able to do it in one meeting based on how the lit statutes read. You don't have to have the three different readings of the ordinance. But again, the documents that follow this are straight out of the state's website. They tried to make it very simple for communities to do this on their own. But the first page of that next tab would be what we need to send to the paper here in today, I guess, for the county side. Now, we can always move this back if the group wanted to continue to meet and talk more. You might have to have special meetings at that point. The way that this is set up is that you really wouldn't have to do that. We would just try to hit everybody's normal meeting and get the advertisements done in time. But of course, you need lead time when you send stuff to the paper and do things like that too. So, but that is the process in a nutshell. That is the impacts. That is the dollar amounts. Hopefully, I know income tax is kind of a wild topic right now, but hopefully I was able to explain it in a way that you guys are all a little more educated on it. And if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So if we enacted a tax, let's say 0.25,
Mm-hmm.
just throwing that out there, and then a few years down the road, we said, well, we really need more. Do we go through this exact same
Yes.
process just to change the percentage?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You indicated that if this would have been done in July, you would have been receiving funds in October. Is that
Yeah, I think that's what that statute says. I'm not, off the top of my head, I'm not positive. It could have been January 1.
So if we don't do it this month and we do it next month, is there, how much of a delay is there?
Basically a year.
It's a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's 3 different implementation periods, and I think one of them is July 15th, and don't quote me on that. I do not remember that statute right off the top of my head, but yeah. And I think that one started collection after October 31st in that current year. The same concept of what we're talking about by doing it October 31st, you would use your trust account funds and be fronted the difference by the state for that collection period to get to the numbers that you need. And then your trust account would build up over the years. You just wouldn't receive like supplemental distributions and such. So, and then that's October 31st would be January 1. If we go after October 31st, I believe you collect next October. So that would be how delayed it is. So it would kind of match like if you did it in July or something like that too. But let me be for sure on that. I was just looking at this October 31st period when we did this. So, but I've done it before in July as well, and I know that we've collected early. So, any other questions I can answer? Or if you guys want the mic, talk to each other.
Do you happen to know how many counties in Indiana do have a public safety list?
I probably have that data, but I don't know off the top of my head. A lot. Yeah. A lot of communities, and we try to track all 92 counties, and we track income tax purely for our clients' data, and then also for just knowing. I want to see what those trends are. Since 2017, communities are doing income tax like crazy because of exactly what we're talking about with circuit breakers and financial constraints. There's some things at the legislature right now that we're working on and hopefully can be a part of helping for our communities. But there's going to be bills that are passed, and we're not always considering that or not income tax, but Indiana is one of the only states that has a tax cap for its taxpayers. It's also only one of the only states, if not the only, that has a maximum levy growth cap for our tax rates. So when we make decisions on revenue sources, it's not to do a ton of property taxes. Right now, I mean, if City of Vincennes wanted to go max out their debt limit, they would just impact everybody else because of the circuit breaker. So they don't do that. They make decisions to keep level debt tax rates and focus on other things. I mean, there's only so much we can do in communities, and income taxes right now, the best arrow in our quiver, if for lack of a better term. So, but a lot of communities have implemented either economic development or the public safety function since 2017 in particular. Nothing else for me. I'll leave it to you guys. Hang out for any other questions if you guys have any. So, thank you guys.
City, county questions here since we're all here? Not just for me specifically, but any discussions to be had?
I would ask, both the county and the county council and city council, and Mr. Estabrook, looking at those percentages and seeing how much income could come in every year, if you were going to pass a public safety with tax, which one would you be looking at, which rate?
I think the question that comes from there is, what does EMS cost? What proposals are there? What
most recent data that we have available from census, I believe.
That's why I say proposal. We are getting muddy here when it comes to.
We got about a year on that.
Service, because it is competitive, and
So then, I guess,
we represent the taxpayers, but
Right,
in the
right,
same
right.
sense, we have to have a service that's the best, and sometimes
You
see
pay
where
more
I'm
for a
going
better
here.
I guess
service. You
I
pay
get-
more for a better service.
I guess in my mind, we're talking about implementing a tax, we don't have a solution yet. We're talking about solutions, but we don't have a solution set in place.
No, because
No, I get it. I mean,
Right.
you've got,
we don't wanna put the cart before the horse.
exactly.
nobody wants to raise the tax. I don't wanna come in at .1 and then a couple of, well, it's not enough, we gotta come back and ask for more. Let's do it up front and get it over with. That's my thought.
I think you asked me the same question, what I've seen of it. 94,000 is what Victor would see, and that, I don't say that would change our life, but that's, a third of that's the paying on a new fire truck, and we've talked about part-time paying some people to man the fire station, and strategies for keeping our one police officer, paying him more, so a bunch of that money answers all those questions.
Okay. All right.
With regard to the impact side, if it's all right, I'm going to add something to that. I've done this during the State of the City. I'd presented a slide. I don't have it readily available right here, but if we remember in 2008, 9, 10, circuit breaker was implemented. Our communities are actually in a position now where our taxpayers are paying less in property tax than they did 13 years ago. Okay, so how are we offsetting the growth in inflationary adjustments in our expenses? We're not. We're literally for however many years. I mean, I think I've been working with Mayor for a little while now, 4 or 5 years probably, in the city council, and every year it's a discussion on how do we mitigate circuit breaker, and ultimately we slow the growth of our budgets so that we can let our revenues catch back up. And we're doing great. We're managing it well. Kathy's doing an awesome job. You know, the department head's doing an awesome job. But what else can we use to offset that growth in our expenses? And that's kind of what this discussion ends up being about. The only thing they're giving us is the income tax.
You have to use lit.
Right.
You have to. There is no other way.
Right. That's what they're trying to tell us. And you can't use food and beverage without a legislative change. Even if that, and maybe that would help, maybe that wouldn't, but that would be primarily city funds. I've had people ask me this stuff, you know, up and down, what other direction can we go? There's just the easiest and the most practical, economical, and I guess equitable is income tax right now. But I'm not about raising taxes and property taxes in a high circuit breaker environment. I'm just not. I mean, it affects everybody here. Unit-wise, it affects you all. Your taxpayers see nothing. But you unit-wise, you guys are going to get impacted negatively. So.
And people that truly can't afford to pay it are affected as well.
Yeah, the lower properties are the ones that are not capped right now.
They are.
Now in the city, most all of them are. Our combined tax rate with everything in the taxing district's a pretty good one, but.
But you said the difference between .25 and .4, it's $1.50 a week
Right.
for the folks.
So Brandon, are we limited to those 3 categories, or can we make more than that?
You can, I think they grow, you can grow them at 0.05,
Okay.
so you can adjust it differently. I just gave you guys kind of a spectrum, yeah, a range. And you'll look, like I said, I've got a couple presentations I've done with income tax. I've got all 92 counties on a plot chart, and you can see where, from the bottom where you guys kind of are to the top, you know, where there's a steady line, and it just, every county's in its own range and a different number. And this data is all on the state budget agency website as well, if you wanted to look at the rates, if you wanted to look at the dollar pools.
I have one
So.
question. Our county attorney isn't here, but I know he had sent to us a synopsis of allowable expenditures. I know we have some code language back here, but that's a question that keeps coming up with
Mhm.
the public, and just to be clear on what we can actually spend these funds on. So that is something that.
I think it's generally interpretation of your attorney's opinion, but I've seen it very broadly used. Let's put it that way. It's not just police and fire. Okay, public safety in the county. You guys, you know, you got probation, you've got the courts, you've got all that. It can be used for capital funding for law books. I mean, it's a lot of different stuff. And the city has some flexibility with that too. But I've preached this all over the state, but fund flexibility is the concept here. You guys are utilizing this revenue as an avenue to fund your current needs, but Once you start to manage those, you also have the ability to free up other funds because of this type of revenue. You create flexibility between your funds, and those funds can fund certain things that maybe this can't. So that's a concept that we talk about a lot, but ultimately it is a tool for creating your flexibility and funding obviously your immediate issue. But I mean, I'll recommend this to everybody, but planning is key, especially in a high circuit breaker environment. If you don't have a plan in place, I mean, you're kind of aiming in the dark without a flashlight. So, but yeah, it's pretty broad. Statutorily, it does open up the door for more than just police and fire and sheriff's department. And Social Security is taxed at the federal level, so folks that are on that will not be taxed by the local income tax. I just got confirmation on that. So there's no income threshold. That was a question that came out earlier. So.
Kelly, when you say long term, any idea how many years that might be on contract for?
No, I mean, the contract would be for short periods, I assume, and we would really need to look at other counties and try and get a handle on what would be best fit for us. When I say long-term, I mean, 15 years down the road, when we're looking at EMS in Knox County, I would like to say we made the best decisions long-term for the investment of. But a contract specifically, I don't have a time frame right now. I really would need to consult some more subject matter
I mean,
experts.
Year to year is too
Yeah.
short because of the
Yeah.
investment they have to
Yeah.
make, so I would think 5 would be
At least
like
one.
minimum.
Yeah, but still, we do anticipate there's gonna be some thresholds that have to be met, again, on level of care, response times, and things that are mandatory for us.
And
Yes, yeah.
just to say it out loud in case someone doesn't know, but for 911, we can pull the response times and review those. So, Mark's not here, but when he was talking about the salaries and your benefits for the ambulance service that we want to see, that in my mind is really what triggered the last 2 or 3 months, is because just like everyone else, they just can't hire anybody. They just can't hire enough people to man those ambulances that they do now. And so that's really what triggers why we're here today.
Is there any other questions that, been looming with y'all for us?
Karen, do you think the money will fix the hiring problem? Officers, because it hasn't for us. I mean,
Right,
you can't.
nobody can hear, I mean, the hospital's offering a $20,000 bonus, sign-on bonus for nurses, and they got 3 applicants, you know.
I mean, we see it on all levels.
Right, so I can't guarantee it, but
I can guarantee that's not going to fix
We
the
have a
problem.
paramedic shortage, period.
Yeah.
right,
We have an EMT shortage, period.
right, and countrywide.
And until we start incentivizing, them going to school, I don't know how.
Well, I'll keep my mouth quiet now, but then we're gonna have to talk.
But to answer your question, from what I know of EMS providers around us, the level of stability, work environment, benefits offered, if that does get better, which it would, that would help us retain our staff, because a lot of ours have gone away. I mean, and they travel. That's the nature of that business too, is they follow the money. They really do.
Exactly, that's our police and fire.
Yeah.
And ambulance service is the same, that's a.
So it might not, but
You've got to
we still have short.
that's certain utilities, they're not going to work that money.
Well, the county sheriff's department, we're down local deputies to go other state police, and, I mean, we're trying to figure out how we're gonna maintain our jail officers right now, so this.
I don't think that the county will ever be able to compete with the state police, though.
We can't compete with the city of Vincennes.
Yeah.
You all, as the city police, currently make more than our county deputies.
But our insurance is not.
True.
You got to have that long-term plan.
We've been through this
I don't
recently.
know.
Yeah.
You know what, their insurance is pretty darn cheap. And it's pretty good. Hey, I think you all have great benefits, but
Yeah, your family is much.
yeah, to be a family in Knox County to be a deputy, our family plan is over $700 a
how many services have bid on that?
But nobody bid on it.
Nobody.
But they've done their due diligence in looking at the numbers. Trust me, they dug deep in the numbers, and they got it all laid out. And that's the number.
But we don't have a way to pay for it. It doesn't matter.
Well,
Yeah.
and the other thing is, I don't want this to happen, I hope it doesn't happen. But if something tragic were to happen to the players, really hard with the ambulance service to up their quality of care before the patient gets to the hospital. They've been doing this for a long time. So they do have skin in the game, and they have for a while. They've done it at no cost to the county or the city because they knew that was the right thing to do for the patient. So, I agree with you. I think if Good Samaritan, if Good Samaritan would be chosen, they would do an excellent job.
I'm not saying they wouldn't, I'm just saying, I wear two hats here, and I wanna make sure that the county and the city still have trucks, and they're not all gobbled up somewhere else, cause that happens a lot. A lot of people don't realize it, that when we don't have someone to answer 911, it's because we got 2 trucks in Evansville and 1 on the way to Indy.
And out of those 400 or 500 trips from last year that were actually taken, 2 were to Louisville. 2 were, or, no, 400, 359 were to Evansville, I think. The balance were to Indianapolis. Well, you go to Evansville, you're tied up for at least 3 hours with an ambulance, maybe 4. You go to Indy or Louisville, you're tied up for 6, 7 hours by the time, from beginning to end, not just the trip. So,
That's where you have to rely on mutual aid, just like we're relying on mutual aid.
Yeah, that's something else I wanna say. We're never gonna have a perfect service, even if it's, AMR in Evansville or Knox County EMS or Good Samaritan. We are always going to have to depend upon Lawrenceville or Pike County or, it's just gonna be the nature of the beast, but it can be
no good way out, and I'm not convinced it's gonna solve everything either, Brian. But we have to make an effort. We can't not respond to the attack we've had of not being able to, EMS is not being able to hire employees to take care of the citizens of our county, whether it's running to Indianapolis or Evansville, or making an emergency run, or transporting from the hospitals to the nursing homes. We can't not make they will put up the money for new ambulances over a 3-year period. Okay, so they would have skin in the game. They've committed to that.
How many?
I think it was 3 or 4, because, yeah.
Look, I think that I'm in. I'll just be honest with you. I'm probably different than some of my other councilmen. But I kind of want equal say in who EMS is, so who they select. That's my point, is that I think that if it's gonna be, if the city of Vincennes has, according to that population, 47% of the population, I think we should be pretty healthily represented at who is selected to run EMS.
But legislation would have to change for us to do that.
That's
Well,
right.
okay, so that's why we're here, and ultimately, again, that's why we are talking about entertaining another local.
Yeah, so it would be more
Okay.
like an advisory board, right, is what you're saying, advising the commissioners on those matters.
But in the end, the commissioners would have the say.
Well, that's where the interlocal would change all that. That's how that's the way.
Well,
On paper, they
I know, they get the vote.
they get the vote.
But
That's
again,
where that's what I.
that's so far down the road from where we're at. We don't have any money.
right.
I
We're just
agree with
sitting
that.
there. We're just sitting there. And that's the bottom line on it. And why wait until 10 months down, we can't collect it until next October, and we've lost X amount of dollars. I mean, you guys know how short you are in different places. We know how short we are in different places. And if it takes $800,000 to fund it, that off the side, but we know how much we got left. So, and
That's where
that can fix a lot of
We
problems.
have, Rich,
that
we
we
have a
don't.
balanced budget, but our issue is that
We
we
don't,
don't.
but it's but it's working, and, so.
Rich, we have a balanced budget, but we wanna make sure our people have the ambulance.
Yes.
I mean, that's.
When you're hanging upside down in the car, or grandma's still at home, well, guess what? I'm sure glad we didn't do this now and have this, and fix this problem. It's, I'm glad I saved that $16 a month, and I'm hanging upside down here waiting for a half hour, somebody can solve me out.
So as I look at the
You
numbers,
can quote me on that, Jenny.
I wanna go to more meetings with Rich Jackson. That's what I want.
Well, believe me, the last thing, as a county commissioner, I want to do is come to the city and say, hey, by the way, we can't do this anymore, and you all are gonna have to pay. No,
Yeah,
it
if we
isn't,
can check tomorrow.
it isn't ideal. We as the county entity provide the EMS, and the nature of EMS is nationally what it is. So I would like to see us partner, not just for the money, but because we share the resource, we truly do. So I think that's why we decided, instead of just being county and going to the council and saying, we need 800 grand on a rainy day, and here's how we're gonna do it, no. I mean, this is a joint effort.
So I guess that brings up something. What happens in case of emergency? If tomorrow the ambulance service went away, what happens?
Tim can answer.
No, I mean, but what happens here?
I mean, literally in Indiana, we have
Do
a
you
system.
as commissioners declare an
We
emergency?
can
Yeah,
declare
okay.
an emergency today, and then we can say, we have an emergency, it exists based upon A, B, C, and D. We tap into our money and we go out and we hire.
yeah, the council would just be forced to come up with the money.
But on the other side of that,
Yeah.
we
It's no
also.
fun. That's no fun.
Okay, so this is twofold. We have emergency powers, but on the other side of this, we also have in Indiana an amazing EMS network amongst our fire departments and our other providers that would come in and assist. And we have those agreements on paper and they exist. So we would have some help, but in true form, it would be an emergency.
Okay.
And we don't want that. We don't.
Okay, that's no fun.
So as I look at the numbers, and please join in, all you council people, whatever we're at.
You're fine.
0.25% was kind of marginal to me.
I have thoughts.
I don't think that's.
I have
even
thoughts.
enough to cover all the bases we need to cover.
The last thing I think anybody wants is to come back in 2 years and say, well, we just gotta have a little more.
So
And it's always a little more.
what number's in your mind, Rich?
I think if you're gonna do it, I think you just do it, fix a
sense for what you need to do.
Hey, I want to tell you, lit pays for pensions too.
Depending on what that
Pensions,
number ends up
in
being
case you
here.
all didn't know that.
Well, I mean, in my mind, I'm looking at 0.3 or 0.35.
It does.
I'm not
1977.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of what I'm looking at.
That's an important detail.
We can take it out of general and move it over there.
The thing is, and it goes twofold, because once a service sees how much money you have available, is that what they're gonna ask for?
Well,
That's
this
what
money.
So if you have an extra $1 million and you know that,
They might, but we don't have to accept that.
But that's why you have a plan, though. I mean, you got a plan for it.
Don't worry, I'm listening.
It's not new money. I mean, it is, but it's not new money. It's fixing your problems. That's the way I've always told it to my clients is when you implement an income tax like this, it's not that we just randomly have $1 million sitting here. It's that we're fixing all the Band-Aids we continue to put on our problems through the fund flexibility or whatever else we have. I do work with a few counties that are county-owned hospitals, and they do the entire EMS function, and it is multi-million-dollar budgets. One of them's identical size city in the major city hub to Vincennes, and a little bit bigger population on the county side. I think they 48,000, something like that, and you guys are right around 40, I believe. So it's very costly, and what I think you're talking about is the contract side. My thing that I keep thinking about, and I'm just trying to give some perspective kind of outside of the community, but if you don't get revenue, you can't raise taxes unless you did a judgment bond or something crazy like that. But I don't even know if you can legally do that. But you cannot raise taxes above the maximum levy thresholds, above your rate cap thresholds, and above the debt that you guys are allowed to issue, which is generally for capital. So tax rates for property taxes aren't going up. Outside of that, charges for services. I mean, you have a service right now that you're not even offering a service for, so you have no service level to offer new rates on. So really, income tax becomes your only threshold, which means that you guys are going to burn into cash, which means that in the city side, we're going to burn into cash. We do have good cash reserves. We have great cash reserves. But I, as the financial advisor for the city, I hate the idea of getting rid of them because it brings down our number of days in cash reserves, and it also doesn't give us a resource for replacing them at this point. But I mean, from what I've seen in other communities and other counties that I do work for, they use income tax to subsidize a ton of this stuff. They also use property taxes where they have low circuit breakers. But that's really the only two resources you're going to use for this type of operational expense. But just from that perspective, I mean, that's the only tax that can go up right now. If I had another option, I'd be bringing it to you, but I just wanted to kind of give the education piece today. But I'm just thinking about all my other clients. How do they handle this type of stuff? And there's no real easy way to do it. But that's why we're talking about this.
I was just going to say, I understand what Councilman Grove is saying about if you have a number out there, that's what somebody's going to bid, but you don't have to accept that bid. And not only that, but as a fire chief, from Oaktown to Decker and Wheatland to Vincennes, there are public safety needs that can't be met with current money. And, you know, so the provider, the But also, our job and our duty is to provide public safety to our people. And, and it's an incredible hard decision. I think that's why we're all back and forth a little bit today. I'm super happy we're all here talking. Do I wish this would have happened in July? Yes. But it's not July now, it's October, so we're moving on.
Well, if we need somebody to fall in that
It's
sword,
September, but it's October.
we'll fall in that sword. We were faced with this early on. We did have meetings early on to make city leadership aware of what's coming. But our current provider, whom we are contracted with, wasn't at a point to let us know what they needed. We didn't know where we were going, and we just got that last week, I think, or the week before. So, the calendar is the calendar is the calendar.
And again, I hope that the city would have some say in who is selected. That's where I'm.
Well, I don't think we would ever make a decision without the city being part of that discussion. We wouldn't be sitting here if that was the case. Ultimately, yes, I had some say, well, the county can still go have a meeting, make whatever decision they want, but, I think it's really, really
I mean,
serious.
we're 39,000 people. We don't fill up Section J at RCA or whatever you want, at Lucasville. We have to stick together, and so we're gonna have to work this out. It's just the way it is.
And we were elected to be leaders. And so now's the time that requires us to lead, is what you're saying, Mark.
Yeah.
So that's what we've got to do, as hard as it is.
I'm like Mark. I mean, we were elected to make those hard decisions. I hate to create a new tax for people that's already struggling with this inflation that's going on.
Stuff.
However, like Joe and Tim, we were part of that emergency services, first responders. We know how important emergency services are. And no matter how many ambulance services we have, remember we had two, we still didn't have enough trucks in this town. I remember one day we worked 7 wrecks all at the same time, didn't have enough officers to work all those wrecks, let alone ambulances. I remember when I was a young officer in shape then, man, I was doing CPR on a gentleman, and so long waiting on an ambulance that I thought I was going to need CPR. So, an ambulance service is important, but how we get it and what we do with it, I think is a negative decision.
And that ambulance is a piece of equipment that our emergency services boys, police and fire, have never paid for.
And
They're
people
always
take,
expected to be there.
people take these emergency
It's a
services.
piece of equipment that, the most important piece of equipment.
But Joe, Mayor, what you're saying there, they never came for a subsidy because they were making a profit,
When did ambulance services stop making?
right? Tim, don't you,
Some point
obviously,
it stopped.
they have done well over the last years, or else they would have gotten out or done a different business, or,
I can tell you firsthand, I was in the ambulance business. We weren't making any money hand over fist by any means. We were scraping by. I think the provider now is scraping by even less because the insurance reimbursables
When you generate more income tax than what you have budgeted, well, it goes into the account as cash flow.
It goes to what?
It goes into your public safety account.
It just sits there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Trent, you know for yourself, you could, we could free up that other fund. I mean, that's gonna give money to the general fund because you're no longer gonna have to pay your firemen, your police officers. That money would then go into your general fund. So that general fund then would be used for other projects.
Right, sure, absolutely.
So would I would love to have an extra $1 million for streets, but is this the right time for that? I don't think so, just from the reports that we've got. I mean, at least not this month. If you tell me it has to be this month, I'm a no. If you tell me it's in July, I'd be willing to.
Well, we already know that we have the meeting, that's not gonna change it between now and then.
It's only got.
But we don't know how much, what the need is. If you gave me, here's what we're gonna do.
That's a big range though, and we still gotta figure out, like, look at what we're gonna do with that. And no disrespect that I respect Mr. Milton probably up here, he's right there for that. And he hired me for my first job, so. That's an important thing, but then knowing the animal that we're dealing, like right now we have possibilities of what it could be. And we're just talking, I mean, that 300, 800,000, that's a huge range, and then coming up with an agreement, like I know, Richie, we talked about, we're putting the car, we can't figure those things out. I mean, we can get closer to that before we would make something, like, here's basically what we're thinking, or here's the range of what we could do. Like, I mean, right now, obviously, this is kind of new for a lot of us, what it could possibly
Well,
be.
here's the range. I know Davies County, our size, Washington, Davies County, they pay $600,000 for 4 trucks. Okay? There's another county just our size to the north, Putnam. They are owned by the county and they pay 1.2 million. So, we can go,
So is it bigger than 800,000 then?
it could, absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so our range is 300,000 to question mark?
Absolutely, and in 5 years, you know it's gonna be
It-
closer
it
to that,
depends on
simply
how
because of
it's
the
managed.
continuing raising of costs.
I mean, if we entertain a private contract with a private entity, it's probably gonna be less.
Well, I just feel like, I almost feel like the discussion's like, let's pass it, then we'll figure it out.
Well, I don't,
That's,
Well,
And
No,
have
no,
all
I mean,
options
it's-
been explored? Have more than one company's been contacted to see what their numbers are? What do you think that you would need?
well, we already know that because of the other counties and what they're paying. I mean, that's the market rate.
and all that, like, I think we can kind of whittle this down to a closer margin for us to make a decision on this.
So 300 to 800,000 is not close enough.
I mean, that's a pretty good range.
I have
So-
no
Still
problem.
doesn't matter if you don't have the money.
Can't negotiate without money.
It ain't gonna matter if money's not there.
So
Yeah, but what we know, I mean, we know where the money comes from,
Okay,
so
can I
you're
ask
telling
a
me,
question?
go ahead and do
No,
it,
no, hold on, let's.
then now we'll figure this
Okay,
out.
I
This is what we're
understand
gonna
what
go with.
you're saying. You want us to shop around,
Correct.
So to answer your question, why now? Why this month? It's simply this. My discussions with McClure and your discussions with McClure, what I've understood is, if they don't get a subsidy next year, starting in January, I don't know that they're gonna be in business anymore.
Okay, no, they're not gonna provide the service to us anymore.
Well, okay.
But they're under contract for how long?
They can
They can break the
They can
contract.
break our
if they're
contract.
not.
We can break our contract. I wanted, I don't know how to stress these words, that I understand we are spending taxpayer money, and we wanna make sure we're as, efficient with that as possible. But when it comes to public safety, there are many more variables than cost. I just want us to understand the service itself and to really look at what that means. Not just to sell out for the bottom dollar. If we made those decisions, I mean, think about our jail 12 years ago. If we would have not been bottom dollar, we wouldn't be $20 million over budget now. I mean, I just want us to think ahead as to what EMS long-term is. That's all. That's all. What looks shiny and good right now is really what it is. I don't wanna have these conversations anymore. What's best for long-term? That's all. They have some weight. So, sorry, my feelings or anything, interrupting that, but I can't put a dollar figure on this type of service. I mean, I just can't. If it costs $20 when we can get it for free, if $20 is better than it is what it is. I don't know what to say now. We'll see what we get. And we can shop around, but it's gonna be truly, shopping around. I mean, I can, there's Yellow, there's AMR, there's TrainScare, there's Try this, there's a million of them. And they pop up overnight. I don't know. Thanks you guys, I don't know where we're already at half an hour.
Well, I mean, in my mind, if we're going to do this month, then we need to have a deadline of what rate we're gonna set on, so that we can move forward with that. I'm not saying it has to be today.
Actually, I think in the advertisement, you're gonna have to post it.
The advertisement that goes out.
Can I see that book?
There you go.
Well, okay, so I know this is, again, following sort of the calendar, but if we put the notice out today, we still have to have public meetings. Nothing is passed.
Correct. It has to be high enough, just like the budget. It can always come back down. Yeah, yeah. I've done that in another county before where we implemented it at 0.25, but we advertised it at 0.5. Like it was, you just buffer it, sort of like the budget process a little bit. So, yeah. So in the back of that book, you have literally the documents from the state. We just need to fill out the information on this, get it to the paper, and the only reason why today's deadline for the paper is theirs because the paper needs lead time to get it in the paper and time to get it before your guys' first meeting. So, but again, you can advertise high, do your work sessions, study sessions, and then you can come back and adjust it in your groups, and then get your ordinances right. So, but do you guys share the same attorney or do you have different attorneys?
City council or county,
Different?
county council and commissioners have the same attorney.
Okay, this is what they're going to want, this part. So whoever your attorneys are, they'll want to review this. This is straight off the Department of Local Government and Finance website. So we did not invent the ordinances. I think we got food at some point. So this is what we would have to get to the paper today.
I'm gonna suggest we advertise before 4, and then have discussions as we go along to see where we need to be with that number before we go to vote on it. That's my thought. Much easier to cut where you can't go up. You can only come down.
Yeah, you can always adopt lower. It's just like the budget process. Yeah. You could technically go, you're not going to do this, but you're at 1.2 in total. You can go up to 2.5. So you could technically advertise 1.3, but I wouldn't recommend that because that would probably shock folks. So. But then you have 2 or 3 weeks until the city needs it. Right, and then they're doing their adoption that date, and then the next meeting for the city, that would be when it would go before them. So theirs is until the 20-something. But, I mean, so when I did it in the last county I did it in, the way that the legislation read and their attorney basically said, no, you can do it all in one meeting. I don't know if you have to suspend the rules for your 3 reading policy, but I don't think so. Yeah, I don't. The way that the state wrote the legislation on the income tax ordinance is it can be done in one reading or done in one meeting. I don't know about readings though, so it's probably written in there. One of the IC codes is probably actually written in those ordinances, but I do know that it can be done in one meeting. Normally, we don't suspend the rules to do 3 different readings, though, so maybe it can be done in 2 readings. I'm not sure how that was laid out, but. Yeah.
Generally, we would have to suspend the rules and do it in one night.
Which.
If we wanted to have a meeting outside of our normal dates.
Yeah.
His timeline takes into account us just doing our normal dates, our normal meetings.
So basically, it goes to the county, which we advertise for. It goes to the county on the 12th. If we advertise today or send it today and advertise in that 10-day grace period. And then from there, it goes to you guys. It goes to advertisement for you guys, and then it goes to you guys in the 20-something meeting that you have.
So if the county passes it at .4, then it would have to come to the city at .4 as well.
You would have to agree with it. So you guys want to come together, get your group together to understand a little bit more before that in the next 2 weeks pretty well is what we're saying. So if we're going to do it. And again, the October 31st deadline is to begin collecting as a unit January 1, 2022. If anything after that, even if we adopt it, the other deadline we talked about was the July 31st or August 1st is how it's written. That's still going to be for January 1. It is not October. I did confirm that. They've been texting me the statutes all meeting. But so the next collection period, no matter when we adopt it, is January 1, 2023. So you would not collect it for a year, plus 2 months, 3 months here. So
So if we want to do PSAP as part of this, we have to advertise that today as well?
I'm pretty sure PSAP can be done by the county. That's a whole different law. That is something that's separate that you guys can do separately. But that's for communications or dispatch.
For county directing a portion of public safety revenue PSAP.
You can direct the public safety as well. You can direct the economic development as well. But PSAP's a separate statute too. That would be applicable to the county specifically. So. And that's, I think, where we're getting now in that area, you need to get your attorney to be ready to draft that ordinance that way. What I gave you is a template that the state would put out for the very basic. We're going to do this. It's going to go here, and that's it. Here's who's voting on it, right? So if you start allocating to other units and doing like the public safety for fire departments, volunteer fire departments, whatnot, I would recommend you get them to write in some language. So. I'm a CPA, not an attorney. So I could probably figure it out, though. Are you going to have Yeah, remember we did the tax, that tax analysis. I'll be honest, I stopped wearing the tie unless I'm presenting it in front of the full council deal. Yep. Keeping everybody else. It's on the LGF website. Check that flood analysis file. You're fine. I'm gonna send actually your information. See how this next one goes.
Which file?
It should be the very top, the LGF one. It's got all the data in it. I don't know if it's saved to your thing, but you had some links to it.
Okay, you got
I'll get it sent to you right now. I'm gonna send it to one of my other guys.
Thank you. Bye, John.
See ya, thank you. Yeah, I gotta send.
Or is it not refreshing on yours? I mean, or mine?
Okay, I need to use that presentation out. And then, oh, that's easy. Hey, can you call Gabe or Jerry, and then I'm gonna send that group Kelsey's information because Mickey's not answering the phone.
He said that.
I'm gonna add you to this text. Alright, I'm sending her contact information and the email to LGS.
Okay. I'll call him.
I texted it contact.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Hey, yeah, we're gonna throw it on there. Some the TV guys.
Hey, I will call you back later. I just. Oh.
Mickey said he'd be available to do it.